Hello, my name is Chris Green, President and owner of the Flood Insurance Guru, and I want to say thank you for tuning in today to learn more about the National Flood Insurance Program, Risk Rating 2.0. We're going to talk about some of the changes here. We're going to try to make sure this is not absolutely boring for you because we all know flood insurance can easily be boring. And one thing I always try to do is make flood insurance entertaining. So I'm going to tell you about a little bit today about who we are. We're going to be talking about, what is NFIP Risk Rating 2.0 and some of these changes happening. Summary. If you've got questions, we're going to discuss all those things today. So first of all, let's talk about who we are. As I said, my name is Chris Green, President and owner of the Flood Insurance Guru, and also owner of the Flood Professor and a flood consulting company where we do flood zone changes across the country every day. We are one of the leading flood education companies in the country when it comes to flood education content. On our YouTube channel or Facebook page, you can find our 1,000 flood education videos in 1,000 days, where we address all these flood insurance changes across the country. Every time there's a flood map update across the country, we're addressing it. You can also tune into our daily flood podcast called the Flood Insurance Guru, or even our blog every day that we do on our website. We really try to put out about 7 pieces of flood education content a day to help property owners, to help mortgage brokers, loan officers, realtors like yourself, really to understand the moving parts of this program and private flood insurance as well. Now, we're not really going to talk about private flood insurance much today because we're talking about NFIP Risk Rating 2.0. But here at the Flood Insurance Guru, we actually help a lot of the private companies build their flood products because I hold a master's degree in emergency management with a focus on flood mitigation. I also bought a house in a flood zone about 12 years ago. So I know how bad of an experience it can be going through that. So that's who we are. So now let's talk a little bit about, what we're going to cover today with NFIP Risk Rating 2.0. This is a new update to the National Flood Insurance Program, probably the biggest update in 50 years. There's going to be a lot of changes from the old program to the new program. So first of all, why are they calling it Risk Rating 2.0? This has really been a big push since the Bigger Waters Act of 2012, when FEMA was really trying to push for a lot of these changes when it came to the National Flood Insurance Program. Making sure that flood risk and flood premium are more in line with each other. We've all seen these crazy flood policies with really cheap rates, really expensive rates, and we could all agree that it just doesn't make sense half the time. How do you get this rate? How do you get that rate? The rating tables that they use can be extremely confusing to everyone, including insurance agents. It's one of the reasons why we work with so many insurance agents across the country every day. So to answer some of these questions about these changes that are happening, first of all, let's talk about some things that are staying the same. And what we're talking about are coverages, on residential and commercial. On residential, it's still staying at $250,000 on the building and $100,000 on contents. On commercial, it's still staying at $500,000 on the building and $500,000 on business contents. Flood zone designation, your flood zone A, AEX. These things are staying the same from a regulatory standpoint, but they won't really be used in rates anymore. They'll just be used to determine if flood insurance is going to be required on a property or not. Prior flood insurance claims, the process of only the property owner being able to get these is still going to be the process. Unfortunately, if someone's purchasing a property, there's no way for them to get a copy of these losses. It has to go through the current property owner. If you want to understand that process, reach out to us. We help people every day reach out to FEMA to get these when they're looking at buying a property or looking at selling a property. A couple other things that are staying the same with this program is the policy assumption process. If you've never been through a policy assumption, it can be very beneficial. This is when you're moving the policy from one property owner to the next. I know that because I did it 4 times on the property that I bought. It can be very beneficial for continuous coverage, for rates, not having to come up with those additional funds for flood insurance at closing. Very beneficial. Same thing with grandfathering. Showing that a property is built with a compliance that you could get a certain rating on a property. A lot of these things will slowly phase out with NFIP Risk Rating 2.0, but as of right now, they are staying the same. So let's talk about some things that are changing. And one big thing are elevation certificates. Elevation certificates are no longer going to be required. That's right. You heard that right. elevation certificates are no longer going to be required. As we stand here today, on post-firm structures that are in special flood hazard areas like A and AE and V, elevation certificates are almost always going to be required. You can't even get a quote through the National Flood Insurance Program without them. Well, that's going away with the new program. And you might be getting excited about this, but hold your horses there, because it doesn't necessarily mean it's a good thing. Because FEMA will be using their own data to determine rates. If there's not an elevation certificate, that data could be off. It's similar data to private companies that we've seen be off. So the best way to get the most accurate rate through the National Flood Insurance Program is going to be with an elevation certificate, if there's one out there. If you're ever trying to search for one, you can also order one through our website, floodinsuranceguru.com. Now let's talk a little bit today about some of these new rating features, things that are going to impact rates that have never really impacted rates before. Things we're talking about are type of flooding, flood frequency, foundation types, the difference between the ground and the lowest habitational floor, distance to water, replacement cost. So let's talk about foundation types first. If you're looking at an elevation certificate, you could possibly have 11 different diagrams. That can be confusing. Thankfully, FEMA is going to 6 diagrams on here. They're basically going to have slab on grade, crawl space, basements, elevated buildings without enclosure, with enclosure, with piers, posts, beams. Those are going to be your 6 main foundation types now instead of 11. That's great news. Now let's talk about the difference between the ground and the lowest habitational floor. This has never really been used before. We've talked about lowest adjacent grade as removing a property from a flood zone. But now the rate can actually be determined with FEMA when understanding the difference between the ground and the lowest habitational floor. Now, what about distance to the water? Now, this is going to be really interesting, because even properties that are currently in flood zone X, where it's not required, are no longer going to have that standard rate. Their rates are going to be based too on things like distance to water. So you may have a property in Atlanta, Georgia, and a property in Miami, Florida, or Houston, Texas. They're all in flood zone X, but they have different rates now because of the distance to water. So this could be a leading factor. Same thing with replacement costs. The higher the replacement cost is for building, the higher the flood insurance rate could be. Now, so we've talked about prior claims. There's going to be this new thing called 20-year look back. Now, FEMA is giving property owners a get-out-of-jail card free, basically. Everybody starts off fresh in the new program. But what happens is, as soon as you have that one claim, they do a 20-year look back. So let's say you had 2 or 3 claims, let's just say 3 during the last 20 years. You now have a claim variable of 3 that could be used as a multiplier when your renewal comes up on top of your regular maximum increase of 18%. So you could be looking at significant increases because of flood claims, even if you didn't know about those previous flood claims. So it's really important to reach out to an insurance agent and really go through the process and understand if you should really file a claim on that property or not. What are going to be the short-term implications? What are going to be the long-term implications? So when are all these changes taking place with the National Flood Insurance Program Risk Rating 2.0? Well, there's 2 phases. Phase 1 is called new business, or for new policies. That's going to be October 1st, 2021 as of now. It doesn't look like they're going to change that. It looks like they're going to push forward with that. Then there's renewal business. So if you have a renewal, if a customer has a renewal that's on April 1st or after 2022, they would go into the new program at that time. So if you've got questions about any of this material, make sure to visit our website, floodinsuranceguru.com. As I said, we've got all these free education materials on there. We even got on there a walkthrough of how to understand an elevation certificate. Check out our Facebook page, Flood Insurance Guru, our YouTube channel, Flood Insurance Guru, or you can just email us, flood@floodinsuranceguru.com, or give us a call, 205-451-4294. Remember, we have an educational background in flood mitigation, which means we're here to help you understand these flood risks, the flood insurance, and mitigating these properties long-term to minimize the exposure of flooding. My name is Chris Green, President and owner of the Flood Insurance Guru, and I want to say thank you for tuning in today.